This is the final edition of the Quarantined Choir. I hope you've enjoyed these little video introductions over the last several weeks as much as I've enjoyed making them. Well, today we end where we should have ended before coronavirus, and that is with Beethoven's magnificent Symphony No. 9 in D minor, Opus 125. Well, Beethoven is the most iconic and significant figure, perhaps in music history. We have a vision of him as the tough, angry genius staring down adversity and producing one deeply expressive masterpiece after another. Well, music came of age with Beethoven. His works struck listeners as a revelation, and his music has enjoyed uninterrupted popularity from his day to the present. Music was never taken so seriously before Beethoven as it was after. Listeners were struck or were awed by Beethoven's personal struggles, especially with deafness. And this new concept of the artist genius, the artistic genius, emerged with Beethoven. Composers are now, or from Beethoven on, really great souls who suffered and created art for all humanity. Well, Beethoven lived from 1770 to 1827. He was the son and grandson of court musicians in Bonn, Germany. His father, Johann, was an abusive alcoholic who beat Ludwig. In 1792, Beethoven traveled to Vienna to study with Franz Joseph Haydn, and Beethoven enjoyed a career as a pianist and composer. In 1802, Beethoven was diagnosed with progressive deafness, and in 1802 he penned the Heiligenstadt Testament, which is to his brothers, in which he related his profound sadness and great despair in his deafness. As a composer, he felt that this was terrible, and indeed it was. But rather than to give in to despair, he chose to devote the rest of his life to his art. His music now took on a new sense of urgency and became perhaps more forceful and strong-willed and uncompromising. By 1820, Beethoven was completely deaf. And the works that arise from this period, the third period of his productive output, can be characterized as perhaps more abstract and introspective and serene. Well, Beethoven is still a very popular figure, and he was popular in his life, and that's evidenced by the fact that at his funeral, 20,000 people attended. Let me say a few words about Beethoven and the symphony. Beethoven created excitement and urgency by maximizing musical elements, by writing higher and lower registers, by creating sharper syncopations and stronger accents, by writing harsher dissonances, and these dissonances which tend to struggle more and more to arrive at yet ever more profound resolutions. He placed new demands on instruments and expanded the orchestra. Well, there are three characteristics that have impressed generations of listeners in Beethoven's symphonic writing. They are rhythmic drive, motivic consistency, and psychological progression. And we'll hear these in the Ninth Symphony. The Ninth Symphony was completed in 1824 and was premiered in Vienna in May of that year. It was originally commissioned by the Philharmonic Society of London in 1817. It's the first choral symphony because in the fourth movement, Beethoven includes a choir, and later composers would follow this example. The words that Beethoven chose are an ode by Friedrich Schiller, An die Freude. In fact, Beethoven actually added a few words to this text. Schiller lived from 1759 to 1805, and along with Goethe is considered among the greatest of German poets. Well, An die Freude is a poem which celebrates joy, and that the fact that joy is available to all of us, the brotherhood of mankind, and it is needed by all of us, and that joy is given by a loving God. And the proof of this is that this love and joy can be seen in nature. Well, at the premiere, Beethoven stood on stage, facing and conducting an orchestra that he could not hear. The orchestra was told to follow the actual conductor. By at least one account, Beethoven conducted as if he were playing and singing all the parts. He was so so imbued and so electrified by the message that he was communicating to the world, so moved and enraptured was he, that as the orchestra ended, as the symphony ended, he continued to conduct. It was the contralto soloist that walked over to Beethoven and actually turned him around so that he could see what was a thunderous applause. The audience gave him 5 standing ovations. I mentioned Johann Friedrich Rochlitz, a musicologist, in my little introduction to Bach's Lobet den Herren, and Rochlitz leaves a first-hand account of Beethoven that I wanted to share with you. Rochlitz said, quote, "His talk and his actions all formed a chain of eccentricities, in most part peculiar, yet they all radiated a truly childlike amiability, carelessness and confidence in everyone who approached him. Even his barking tirades are only explosions of his fanciful imagination and his momentary excitement. They are, simply blustered out, lightly, good-humoredly, the offsprings of a mad, humorous mood." Well, I've posted 3 videos for you to watch. The first is a tremendously moving one by the American conductor Leonard Bernstein. You must begin with that. And then, of course, an actual performance of the 4th movement of the Ninth Symphony conducted by Daniel Barenboim. And then I've also included a scene from the, I believe it was 1994 movie starring Gary Oldman as Beethoven, entitled Immortal Beloved. And it's the scene that features the premiere of the Ninth Symphony. I think you'll find that very enjoyable to watch. Well, I'll leave it with that. Thanks for watching. And until I see you again, goodbye.